Check, check, check. Yes, this works. Thank you so much for having me here. And more or less, I'm here to talk to you about us crazy Indians being in Guatemala and what is the story here of us having reached here. So I know the sun is really crazy strong. I've never spoken in such heat, but those of you who are here, thank you for being here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do and how we are going about it. So the story starts back in 2012. I was going through a bit of a rough time. We had made some investments which were down in doldrums. We didn't know whether the company would survive or not survive, whether we would wake up the next day and we'll have to shut shop and our bankers would call it good. I'd also gone through some personal crisis, a divorce. I had two girls and we were trying to settle that. So it was a kind of a crazy period. And around that time, I was asked a question from my wife now, what would you do if you were not to do this and there were no barriers? Because I would keep talking about, not working in the business I was in. And what came to me was I would do something with nature. But then it took about almost 3 years to actually realize what we really wanted to do. And what became clear to me was that we wanted to build things at scale and impact. And why this happened was because of the things we were seeing around us. And of course, some of this you'll see in Guatemala, but this is what we saw back in India. These were streets, there were waterways that were getting clogged, there was land dumps, not landfills, with methane generating, there was animals eating all sorts of waste, there was seas spewing out plastic back out of the ocean and then us dumping it back in. There was marine life getting affected, turtles eating, and I'm sure you guys have seen enough videos of that. And, if you cut open a bird, you would find things like batteries and styrofoam and plastic bottle caps, etc. And this was reality. And we were doing nothing about it, although we were in the packaging business. And this is the other statistic that really, it's too complicated to get into it, but what I'll do is that the focus is the single-use bit. So if you look at the statistic, we manufacture almost 8.3 billion tons of plastic around the world, out of which 5.6 billion is single use. Now, what does single use mean? Single use is typically 12 minutes of usage. 12 minutes, that's it. And then it'll last for, they say, 500 years, but the first plastic was just created about 70, 80 years back. So the first plastic still has 420, 30 years to go. So that was the kind of damage we were seeing. And just for the convenience of 12 minutes, we were creating this. And there was, of course, many, many different substrates, like the ones we are tackling today, that would actually last for maybe 1,000,000 years. So we started focusing on this. And of course, we've been talking a lot about recycling. But what we also saw around the world was that countries were collecting their waste. They were transporting it across the world. And only about 50% was being recovered and transported all the way back, using almost 60, 70% of the energy in production. And that didn't make sense either. So we started thinking, what are we going to do? And we were already manufacturing pulp and paper from sugarcane waste. You guys have a lot of it in Guatemala. But we didn't care where the paper went. So it could have gone into hot melt on one side, polyethylene on the other side, and it became a soap wrapper. Or it could have gone into something else. So we decided to tackle 3 areas. The first one being flexible packaging. These are potato chip, chocolates, biscuits. You go to a supermarket, you're told they don't give you carry bags anymore. And you have to buy a carry bag or you have to carry your own. But if you look inside it, it's terrible because everything inside it is packaged in multi-layered plastics, which is actually much more difficult to, it cannot be recycled, it cannot be composted, of course, so it just stays forever. The second was our traditional domain of food carry. We were already doing a lot of material here, but we started innovating in different disciplines because we knew paper couldn't do everything. So we started working with minerals, with bioplastics, etc., and we created another patent now, which can be transformed into bags. And the third was the replacement of styrofoams, which was, again, styrofoams is almost 97, 98% air. So what are you going to do with it? You throw it somewhere, it'll become microparticles, it'll go into the river bodies, what our last speakers were talking about, and it's going to get into people's insides. They say, those of you who eat fish, they say almost 30% of the fish today has plastic in its body, and we ingest it through the fish. So this is what we really started working on. And in 2018, we commercialized our first bit. It wasn't the first thing that we actually looked at. This is the styrofoam replacement that I'm going to show you a short video of. But it was the first that came to see the light of commercialization. The one we were working on for longer was flexible packaging, which has actually seen the commercialization this year. But this was a beautiful range of products, and it was really focused on new design and new ideas. So again, I'll talk about it as it plays. Our range of products is called Chuck, and the unique thing about it is that we actually challenged a lot of things which were considered normal. Normally, plates were considered white, round. Of course, many of them were made from styrofoam, but we challenged that idea and also made it modular, and this is what you'll see in this video. Oh. Sorry, it ended abruptly, but the beauty of this is the engineering around it. The engineering around it is based on geometry, or Lego is what we studied, and we said, how can we create two bowls that will actually fit into everything? And that gives the customer a lot of freedom. If they want to serve two things, they can just put a bowl alongside a bigger bowl, and it fits. So everything fit into each other. And of course, the idea was that how true can we be to our calling? So, people said that you have to mix certain other kinds of pulp. We refused. People said you have to make it white, which meant more chemicals and bleach. We refused. We were told that, only certain designs would work, and we said no, and we just remained true to our calling. And the other thing was that we believed in scale, which is what, of course, our whole passion has become. And what we started with was over 1 million pieces a day. And even our suppliers laughed at us. They were like, what are you guys talking about? Why don't you start with 100,000? And we were like, nope, if we want to bring change at scale, we have to challenge ourselves, and that is what we did. And that led to us gaining more confidence in what we were doing and the ideas that we had back in 2015 that we were going to focus in this area. And it led to, okay, what do we really know? So we only knew one thing, which is this beautiful fiber that you guys have a lot of, and it's bagasse. And the good thing was not many people around the world knew so much about it. We had been processing it for about 40 years. We had, of course, been researching a lot of different ideas, but we said, this is what we know. Let's start with what we know. So I was given the task and went on a wild goose chase. I'm going to come back to the next slide. So I went on a wild goose chase and went to Mexico, Belize, of course, Guatemala, Colombia, Peru, had conversations with El Salvador, Brazil, and finally decided that this was going to be the place, and I'll tell you why a little later. But the other thing was the opportunity. There's a huge opportunity out there. The food packaging market itself is over 660 odd billion. North America or even United States is $100 billion. So that's the kind of opportunity we were looking at. So we started thinking what we are going to do, and we were going to expand in a significant way. So we started expanding our India site. We've already put that in motion. As I told you earlier, that we were going to commercialize our flexible packaging, and that is going to happen now. We've created new chocolate packaging that is already in the market. We are now creating shampoo sachets that get strewn after usage, and that's going to get into market this year. And this is all home compostable, marine safe, land animal safe. If anybody ingests it, nothing would happen. It's that kind of effort that we've come out with. And of course, we are very, very excited about Guatemala, and we are very thankful for the sugar mills here, because they finally decided that they are going to give us 600,000 tons of bagasse, and which is a big deal. So this is actually, Guatemala is going to become the biggest size site in the world for compostable packaging, thanks to this. So this is, thank you. And of course, the aim is to work on different markets. So India covers South Asia and Middle East. Uh, Guatemala is going to look at North America. We have started looking at sites in North Africa, and I'm hopefully going to meet more companies later this year, and we'll try and go towards Europe. And then Philippines is the place which we are deciding on for East Asia, Southeast Asia. So that's the idea behind what we are doing. We, of course, are based heavily on innovation. A lot of ideas like you guys just heard about all our products being home compostable, marine safe, etc. I do have some samples with me if you want to see it later. But we consider R&D and innovation to be the crux of what we are doing. We have a huge facility with amazing scientists in Bangalore, India, and there's a huge innovation pipeline. So we look at what is going to happen in the next year or 2 years, and then what is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. So we are working with microbial multiplication. We are working with different substrates that haven't been looked at right now. We are looking at things like hemp. That we are looking at different fibers. We are looking at different technologies, collaborating across the world, trying to see how we can create better products in times to come. So the question is, why Guatemala amongst all the places that we went to? It was actually love at the first day. I wouldn't say at the first sight, but close to first sight. But the first day, I was literally, there's an agency, and I think some of them are here today, Pronacom, and Alejandro is right there smiling. But so I was received by Pronacom, and in one day, they made me make the sugar mills, meet the sugar mills. They made me get all their benefits. They made me meet the vice minister of economy at that stage. So it was just, I was just amazed at what could be done. And of course, after that, so of course, government keenness was one. The second was a huge push from the sugar companies here. I was amazed at the way they looked at things, the way they looked at innovation, and how forward-looking they were, because we were talking to sugar companies across the world, and we hadn't seen that kind of effort and the thought that went into it. Of course, if we were to supply the North American market, this was a great strategic location. I was taken to Mexico as well, but we felt still that the Guatemala was a better location. There was availability of land, and infrastructure was great. We actually have just finalized the land, and Ricardo is here, who's been instrumental in doing that, and we are moving forward with that. Human capital, we were amazed at Intercap, the kind of work Intercap does here for training, because we set up our own centers. In India, we work with right from age 3. We start setting up schools, we start setting up Intercap kind of organizations where we train our own people, but it was literally found that we can actually join hands and work with another partner to build these courses. And of course, each person we met was amazing. So that was a huge plus for us. And also as a business, because we work for impact, it's always important to make sure that wherever we invest, there's a huge impact, and we felt that in Guatemala, we could have that. So finally, ultimately, we are moving forward. We are setting up a plant that is going to process about 600,000 tons of bagasse, at least initially, hopefully more than that in the future. And it is going to create flexible packaging and food service products. And now the key is that what is the next step? So, of course, the first is come invest. We are starting our rounds for investment. The project size is relatively big, but every penny counts. Enable impact. We want to work with communities, and there's a lot of people here who actually work in that domain. We have to tie hands, and we have to find ways to work together. And finally, we want to digitize. We are heavily technology focused, and again, I felt in this conference there's a lot of people who come from that domain, so that'll be great. So thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. My question remains to everybody: which piece will you tackle? People talked in the morning about purpose in the main hall, and I think that's really important in life. That has given us literally everything we work for today. So thank you so much for having me here, and let's solve together. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Before you leave, it's nice to actually hear good news. Guatemala being part of these changes, and I want to make you part also of this panel. So anyone has any questions or would like to address or give any information, please. Perfect, thank you. Could you stand up, please, sir? I would like to know everybody's name, so could
Sure,
you introduce
my name is Philip.
Thank you, Philip.
Thank you, Philip.
And we're very grateful that you're here. I mean, you've seen there's trash everywhere, so I'm, very thankful that you're here. I want to ask about prices and costs. How competitive are you versus what you would hopefully be displacing?
That's a wonderful question. So two things we talk about in packaging. We talk about what is the dharma of packaging. So dharma of packaging is to protect what is inside. So that's the first part. If we are going to package a potato chip and the packaging doesn't work, say you open the bag and the chip is no longer crispy and nice smelling, or it has another problem that the bag breaks and it falls out, we've lost the purpose. And that's a bigger environmental damage because those potatoes have been grown and the irrigation has been done. They've been sorted, transported, put into a cold storage, again taken lots of water usage, lots of oil, energy created, and then the supply chain forward. So we can't imagine that loss. So the first dharma, it must work. If it doesn't work, there's not even a talking point. 50% more. Now, if we look at flexible packaging, today's time, the chocolate company that is working with us is paying about 40% more. But their logic is they want to be very sustainable. But their logic is that ultimately in the scheme of things, it doesn't matter. Because if my chocolate is going to cost $2 or $3, your packaging is still 10 cents. So for me, if I want to keep that in my brand promise, I'm going to be there. But that said, our regular effort is to find a way to bring down the cost and try and be as competitive as we can to the current substrates. But thank you for that.
Well, before you leave, I don't know. We still have time for another question. Perfect. We have two here.
Yeah, well, I'm into waste, so I was
Count
so
me in.
happy when I read on the news that you were going to be here in Guatemala, putting the plant. So it's a privilege to meet you, and maybe it's a reflection more than a question. I think costs are badly made. Not all, but I think we're not taking into account some of their true costs. So styrofoam is very cheap, but it's not taking into account the damage it's creating and how much water loss it's generating. So I think we have to replant the question of the true cost. So in that perspective, I think it makes total sense to move forward to more sustainable materials. And I do think that sometimes people say, oh, I don't put a waste management plant because it's expensive. And how expensive is it to lose a lake or a river? So I think we have to put new value into things we have made invisible. But thank you for coming.
No, I wish we will, but again, like Philip asked, the true reality is that it will be apple to apple. And I'm totally with you. There would be nothing better because the kind of damage we create consequentially is just unprecedented. But that said, we live in a world of commerce. In the end, those of you who work in commerce, we can talk all the utopian things we want. It will come to the price. The purchase manager's role is clear. He has to save cost or at least not increase cost. So yes, if we get to talk to the purchase manager straight, nothing is going to move forward. So thankfully, the companies have their own aims now, and the customer is very receptive now. Even if I look at the last 3 or 4 years, it's a significant shift. Everybody has a goal of 2025 or 2030, and they're searching hard for it. The challenge that the customers face, so we have to also understand that there is a challenge on the other side. Like I was talking about the small shampoo sachets, which just get strewn. Unilever needed 16,000 tons for just that material. Who's going to give it? So their challenge is big because they say, okay, we can replace it, but can you supply 16,000 tons? Because otherwise I can't replace it. So there are also challenges in the supply chain, the scale, and that's the reason why we work on how can we process 1 million tons? Because otherwise it's a great idea, but the impact will be limited. So that's the idea, but thank you.
Well, thank you. We have another.
Thank you so much. So I wanted to know the final product is going to be made here in Guatemala and sold here because I'm just worried about the carbon footprint of that then being transported to somewhere else.
Yeah.
Thank
So that's a wonderful and pertinent question. We were talking about this yesterday with your new government, and And there are two products that we are going to make in Guatemala. The first is flexible packaging. And since we want to do it at scale, what we make is the base product, which is basically a butter paper, like a greaseproof paper, lined with certain bioplastic layers. So that's what we make, and then we sell it to companies around the world, mostly in this case, North America, saying that whatever you want printed and pouched, we will supply to whoever you want. The second product we make is bagasse pulp, and then we look at converters, co-converters, who are going to convert it to bowls, plates, which we will offtake and then sell forward. So your point is very valid, and our CEO is sitting right here, Eduardo, and he was very worried about that, and he basically said that, we have to sell in Guatemala, we can't not sell. So we have to look at the government system. That's what we are looking at, and that's what we spoke about as of yesterday to the government, where we said the challenge is that we are in an export zone. And if we export it out, then we are not charged any taxes. But if we sell in Guatemala, it's going to be 30% tax. So it's going to become uncompetitive. But they said they will look at it because we do want to sell and change in Guatemala first before sending it out. So thank you.
Yes, it's a last comment. I'm very happy to see have these glass bottles. I'm looking forward to see your package on the next Volcano Summit. Let's hope for it.
I hope so. My wife is sitting right there. She has samples. We can show it to you right now. But yeah, usage, of course. Thank you so much. That's very kind.
Thank you very